Hey, it's JJ Virgin, and welcome to the JJ Virgin Lifestyle Show, where I give you the latest cutting-edge intel to help you look, feel, and think better. Now, today's show is a question we probably get asked every single day on my Facebook page, and that is, should I do ketosis? What about the ketogenic diet? How does the ketogenic diet work? So I was fortunate. I was having a party at my house a couple weeks ago for a bunch of the health experts, and Mike Mutzel showed up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to have you on my podcast. I'll tell you why. Here, let me tell you a little bit about Mike, and you'll see why this is just such a score. So Mike's got a BS in biology and a master's in clinical nutrition, and he wrote The Belly Fat Effect, the real secret about how your diet, intestinal health, and gut bacteria can help you burn fat. He also has a great weekly video-based interview series called High Intensity Health that you can check out on YouTube. You can get all of that, by the way, if you go to highintensityhealth.com. But he is passionate about the ketogenic diet. He knows so much in this area. So I was like, oh, you're exactly the person I was looking for. And this interview blew my mind. He is going to tell you some things in this interview that I've never heard before. In fact, the one thing that he does every single day is something that I about fell over when he told me, and I'm going to try. So stay tuned. You'll have to hear what it is, and then I'm going to challenge you to try it too. So I am super excited to share Mike Mutzel with you today. All right, let's do it, Mike. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here with me today.
Thanks for having me. It's such an honor.
Oh, well, this topic I get asked about every single day. So I am thrilled to have you on talking about ketosis and the good, the bad, who should do it, all those things. So let's jump into it. And actually, I think before we even start to ask questions about it, like, why don't you explain, just in case someone isn't quite sure what it is, what ketosis is?
Yeah, really awesome question. So basically what ketones are is a metabolite of acetyl-CoA. So just basically it's a fatty acid-like metabolite made from the liver. So our liver makes these ketones, and they float around throughout our body, through our brain, into our heart tissue, to our muscle tissue. And it's a way to kind of get energy from a different substrate via fat. And so that's what's really exciting about it. And what it does, actually, why I'm so excited about the ketogenic diet, is it not only is an energy substrate, but it changes different cellular signaling pathways throughout the body that suppress cancer, that suppress inflammation, that suppress autoimmunity, that help us think better, that turn off cravings. And so it does so much more than just provide energy in a different form. So it's really exciting in that regard as well.
Okay, and some of these things I may interpret as English as we go along.
Right.
So basically, ketosis provides another way to get energy to the body instead of using sugar as fuel. So, and I know I want to bring that up because, there's still some question because people don't understand ketosis and what's different from, diabetic ketoacidosis, and there's all those confusions. So this is a nutritional therapeutic diet designed to do that. Now, let's talk about the health benefits of doing nutritional ketosis.
Yeah, the benefits, it's a laundry list, and it's been used since, the 1930s, 1920s for treatment-resistant epilepsy in children who literally there was no other intervention that worked. And so all of a sudden, individuals found that when these children would really restrict their carbohydrates, and that's really key. I just want to kind of pause and take a small lateral sidestep. The key here to get into ketosis is to have really low insulin. I know you talk a lot about this, JJ, in the past. So that's the key. When insulin and glucose is low, the liver says, okay, well, we need to fuel the brain, need to fuel the body with some other substrate. So let's start making these ketones from fatty acid molecules. And so that's how ketogenesis, literally the formation of ketones, starts. So it's key here. If people are like, okay, how do I get into ketosis? It's really a low insulin lifestyle and diet. And so that's key. But going back to all the benefits. So researchers, back in, again, the 1930s realized that these kids who literally failed all the other treatments at that time and still continue, this treatment, I should say, the ketogenic diet for the application of drug-resistant epilepsy, which affects about 30% of the individuals that have epilepsy. The ketogenic diet is the therapy that actually works.
Well, but
so it
Mike,
changes.
You know what? I got to interrupt you here because, the anti-seizure drugs suck.
Right.
They suck. They have terrible, because, my son had to be on them after the brain injury. They're horrible drugs. They make you gain weight. They can create insulin problems. They can be lifesavers, but if there's a dietary intervention that you can use instead, why wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. And there's really no side effects. I mean, outside of maybe we can talk a little bit later about the keto flu, and I can talk a little bit about how that might be more like intestinal permeability and the so-called metabolic endotoxemia, which is a big scary word. But, if you just rapidly change your diet and have 150 grams of fat a day, you might absorb some bacterial inflammagen. So we'll talk about slowly easing into it. But outside of some mild GI issues, there's really no side effects. It's all upside in terms of lowering cravings, burning more fat for fuel, having more energy, the ability to go longer between meals. I work a lot with executives and CEOs, and they tell me, after I've started the ketogenic diet, my team notices that I'm so much more calm, resilient. When we have problems and issues, which every business and family has issues, you can get through, weather the storm without having to blow up and have an explosion. So your mood is much more even. That goes back to the research on the treatment-resistant epilepsy, how the ketogenic diet is so effective for those kids because it changes the GABA to glutamate ratios in the brain. It makes the brain just much more even and stable.
So any other benefits before we start going into some of the, how to actually do it and what to avoid, et cetera?
Yeah, I think a major benefit is calming down the immune system. So there's so many individuals with Hashimoto's and autoimmune thyroid disease and rheumatoid arthritis and MS. And so what the ketogenic diet really does is it changes these complex, and I don't want to scare anyone with big words, but these inflammasome complexes in various immune signaling pathways, it modulates that. And so I think anyone that has, and as you know, and you talk about on the show a lot, JJ, inflammation is at the root cause of every disease that we can think of that harms humanity. So if we can lower our baseline level of inflammation and whilst at the same time burn fat and have a great physique, why not do it? So that's why I'm really excited about this, because all the research, there's a lot of research, I should say, in the fields of cancer and immunology that are looking very heavily at the ketogenic.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up cancer because there was quite a stir in our Mindshare community over diets for cancer. And one person was like, eat all the fruit you want. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what? No. It was a little bit of, even us nutritionists, you put 10 of us in a room. I think, I don't know where we'd actually all land on one thing, but ketosis diet for seizures and for cancer, to me, seem two that are pretty darn clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and can you talk a little bit about why ketosis would be good for someone with cancer?
Yeah, there's a lot of different applications, but it comes down to the so-called Warburg effect. So there's different characteristics of cancer and cancer cell metabolism and so forth. But, there's this whole link between kind of metabolic dysregulation that can cause immunological processes like cancer to run awry. And so cancer cells love sugar. They undergo this aerobic utilization of glucose, which is kind of not what we see, when we in healthy cells and so forth. And so they kind of ferment sugar and kick out lactic acid and make all these nasty metabolites, and that helps to fuel their growth. And so when you really are in a ketogenic style state, you actually kind of suppress that ability, this Warburg process. And so again, there's different cancer types and subtypes, but what we're learning about in the research, at least definitely neurologic-based cancers, brain cancers, eye cancers, respond favorably to a ketogenic diet. And there's different, breast cancers that may or may not be so affected by it. But, suffice it to say, if you want to prevent, here's the other thing, we talked about benefits. In my eyes, this is the most powerful, is the ability to protect our genome and upregulate certain positive genes via the ketogenic diet-based epigenetic impacts. And so I'll just summarize that very quickly. There are all these gene-nutrient interactions. We're learning that our environment affects the way that our genes are expressed. Well, the main ketone body, beta-hydroxybutyrate, BHB, is a powerful histone deacetylase inhibitor. And these histones are these proteins that control the way that our genes are expressed. So it's, if you go to any cancer research, there's the AACR, American Association for Cancer Research, and all these conferences, they literally, JJ, I've been to some of these 20,000 people from all over the world, and scientists and researchers are all talking about cancer. They spend days talking about histone deacetylase inhibitors, these compounds, and they talk about sulforaphane and green tea, things you talk about all the time. Well, it turns out that one of the most powerful HDACs, histone deacetylase inhibitors, is beta hydroxybutyrate, the main ketone. So if you really want to globally change, your genomic structure and protect it and turn on good genes, turn off bad genes, being in ketosis is the best way, in my opinion.
So what about, obviously this is lowering your carbs way down, and we're going to talk about that, but beyond carbs, protein, and fat, is there more to it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, this is a lifestyle, and that's why I'm so excited about it, because it really forces people to make global sweeping changes in their whole life, because you have to be sleeping, you have to be managing your stress, you need to exercise. And so, all these different components, and also gut health is very, very important. And so we can talk about the reasons why. But, if you have intestinal permeability, you're taking PPIs and you're not chewing your food, you're eating outside of your circadian rhythm, you're going to affect insulin and insulin sensitivity, then you're not going to make ketones. I mean, there's so many different components there. So that's why I think it's really important, because this is like a biofeedback, measuring the ketones and watching the body fat, get burnt and so forth, is feedback for your lifestyle. So it's not just like, oh, try this diet, and then 12 weeks later you can go back to the way you're eating. This is a lifestyle. And I think, again, the pluses can go on and on, but I think it's, there's so many factors, and that's why I think it's so important for once people start tracking their ketones, it gives people that feedback. So they know that, oh yeah, that alcohol, 3 glasses of wine, that kicked me out of ketosis, maybe I shouldn't do that. So you get that feedback to change.
So for everyone going, oh my gosh, I'm getting overwhelmed already, don't worry, we've got stuff for you.
Yeah.
Don't worry, breathe, don't raise your stress hormones. You said 2 things in your last statement. I mean, there's like any one sentence or paragraph you say, I'm like, all right, we could spend an hour on it. But you said something about meal timing that I just love, because people do not talk about this enough, and eating, following the circadian rhythm. I mean, obviously we know we should be sleeping that way, but no one talks about eating that way. So I just love you because I've never heard anyone bring it up, and I'm always harping on meal timing. And I was like, gosh, that's fantastic. So just roll that out a little bit. And then I want to dive into gut health and ketosis, because you also mentioned that. So we have to talk about that.
Totally. Yeah, I would love to. Yeah. So this circadian rhythm concept is really fascinating. Again, it comes from the cancer world. I mean, if we look at chemotherapeutic agents actually in the oncology wards and so forth, people will biopsy, can look at the different tissues and so forth and find out the chronotype and the circadian rhythm. And they'll actually give chemotherapeutic agents at the time that phase 2 detoxification enzymes are at their lowest, so that they can slam the cancer with high doses of oncological medication. So this is where the research came from. It's very validated and backed, but it turns out that our body tends to, our GI tract functions between a window, and depending upon your chronotype and, your circadian rhythm, it's between 10 a.m. and about 6 p.m. And so when you eat outside of that window, digestive enzymes, bile, motility, hydrochloric acid, all the ingredients needed to break down and assimilate and absorb the stuff that we're eating is not being released, at its optimal level outside of that window. And so we know this, that late night eaters tend to have more belly fat and more blood sugar dysregulation compared to early eaters. I used to do a lot of competitive bike racing, and the mantra was eat early and sleep early, right? And so that was the thing. If you don't want to get fat, you want to stay lean, that's what you do. And so, but it turns out that not only does the food that we eat get impacted by our circadian rhythms, but it's a binary system in a sense. It's a bidirectional system where the food that we eat entrains or regulates our body's circadian rhythm. So just getting up and having a bulletproof coffee or a protein shake with some avocado and then having an early dinner, you're telling your body that, okay, it's time to go to bed now, because it's predicting these inputs. And so it's very important, if a tip for people, just be very consistent with your meals. When you start oscillating things and fasting this day and then, eating at this time and then traveling, and you really throw off your circadian rhythms. And then people wonder, gosh, I just can't lose the weight anymore. What am I doing wrong? So just keep that tip in mind.
I love that, because, this is the one we've really got to get into our head, is our body is not a bank account, and everything is information. And this is such a key point. And I know a lot of the intermittent fasting, the 8-hour diet, all that stuff started to bring some of this information home to us. But I like the fact that you're putting in there, like, get on a schedule, stay on your schedule. Same with sleep. Get on a schedule, stay on a schedule. Works so much better. Now, what about gut health and ketosis? Because you kind of blurted that out in that last paragraph too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a million different ways. I mean, that the gut innervates, but I think one of the most important and the most powerful is when we just start eating more fat, we actually release these different hormones from our GI tract. So, the gut is an input and output kind of receiving center, if you will. So you start eating healthy fats, avocado, coconut, ghee butter, nuts and seeds, and so on. What you do is you release these different gut hormones. One of them is called cholecystokinin, or CCK, and that actually gives feedback back to our brain and turns on our parasympathetic rest and digest system. And so for people that have the racy mind, they're busy, they're anxious and stressed, they're in the fight or flight mode, this is a great way to actually calm down that anxiety, stress-producing aspect of our autonomic nervous system. So that's, I think, in my eyes, and you'll hear this a lot. I mentioned that executive that I've been working with, but so I think that's the most important point, calming down our stress response. Number two, our gut hormone. So if we, as I mentioned, the circadian rhythms and not chewing your food and eating mindlessly and, being on Instagram while you're eating and all that sort of stuff, you're not triggering the release of these gut hormones properly. So mindful eating is congruent with ketosis and fat burning. If you look at the success, and I know you know this, JJ, and talked about it on the show probably, but if we look at bariatric surgery, how does bariatric surgery cause rapid weight loss? A lot of people think, well, it's just restricting how much food people can eat. But that's actually only a small mechanism. If you talk to bariatric surgeons and look at the research, the real way that gastric bypass surgery causes rapid and sustained weight loss. Again, I'm not a fan of the procedure because we'll talk about natural ways we can mimic it, but it releases these different incretin hormones from the GI tract in a powerful way, which causes a rapid increase in insulin sensitivity and post-meal processing of nutrients. So I think that's, again, one of the key interventions, when people are trying to get into ketosis and burn fat better, is really, chew your food mindfully, have polyphenolic compounds like green tea and curcumin and rosemary and garlic and ginger, and not just look at the food for their quote unquote macronutrients, but also their micronutrients and fiber content, and because that can have a huge impact on how you process the food. So
ketosis versus low carb.
Yeah, this is a really awesome question. And I think a lot of people get confused with this. I think if you're brand new to this, you hear about the ketogenic diet or whatever, start with low carb first, because low carb is almost foolproof. And that's where I got introduced to this a long time ago, back in 2002, for like a spring break. I was in first year in college. A personal trainer was like, all right, you want to get cut? Here's what you do. You just drop your carbs and have half a jar of peanut butter. We didn't have almond butter back then. And you could lose weight really quickly. So I think starting at low carb, it's foolproof. A lot of people can do it. There's not a lot of trial and error. But if you want to go down the ketogenic road, which I don't think it's for everyone. I was actually, Dave Asprey was at my house yesterday. We were filming a podcast and we were talking about this. Like, you know what? If you go too low carb for too long, you can lose strength and size. So people doing CrossFit and Olympic lifting, and I love weightlifting myself. And so I did full keto for about 4 months, like no carb cycling, nothing. And I was just too skinny. I lost a lot of strength. And so I think full keto is for those people that are very committed. You've had a traumatic brain injury. Maybe you've been in a car accident. Maybe you have a family history of cancer. Maybe you have an autoimmune disease, something like that. You have wild moods, ADHD and things like that. Like, you're prone to anger. Like all those different categories that I mentioned can really be helped and improved dramatically through the ketogenic diet. But if you're just kind of like, what, I'm not that committed, I just kind of want to dabble, I think low carb is great. And what is low carb? I think under 50 grams of carbs per day, not including broccoli and Swiss chard and some of those vegetables, but like impact carbs like from a yam or a squash or some berries or fruit. Under 50 grams a day, you can still really turn on the ketogenic pathway in your liver and start making more ketones, have relatively low insulin, but you're not going to notice any necessary like performance drop, and there's not going to be a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, that's where I have most of my people living, especially people with adrenal issues. I find that they do better there than going full out. What about supplements and nutrients, maybe, MCT oil, some of the new ketosis supplements. Like, what about those? Do you
Awesome.
recommend those?
Yeah, awesome question. So let's talk about those. I think the exogenous ketones, as they're called, are a nice bridge. It's like, okay, how is this going to affect me? How, maybe to commit someone to lifestyle change. I do not think they're good long-term to be dependent on, and so the problem that I see is people go out and they have kind of a cheat meal, but maybe it's pancakes or, I don't know, a burger with a lot of fries and carbohydrates, and then they take the exogenous ketones. Well, what we're doing is mimicking what you mentioned earlier, JJ, is diabetic ketoacidosis. And so we have high glucose and high ketones. And so that's really kind of like a pathological disease type state. So I think if you're going to use exogenous ketones, it's when you're fasting, it's helping you to get into ketosis, and it's helping you to commit to that lifestyle change. You can really get into ketosis very easily with just MCT oil, just cutting your carbs and and the MCTs are very ketogenic. They're absorbed without bile and all that sort of stuff. The liver is going to see them and make these ketone bodies, which is great. But other natural supplements, two of my favorite, berberine, hydrochloride.
I love berberine. Berberine's the most amazing. That is like my favorite of all time supplements. I'm like,
totally.
Yeah, it's the most people, no one seems to be talking about it. It's like the wonder supplement. So tell us why you love it so much.
Well, if you look at the data on berberine, it changes the microbiome in a positive way. It increases these gut hormones. It's so, if you look at the efficacy, the effectiveness compared to metformin, and I'll just pause. I'm not like always anti-drug, and metformin happens to be a decent drug, very small side effects, but berberine is natural and it has better efficacy or data when it comes to post-meal processing of glucose. So berberine's awesome. Another one that I know you love, JJ, is omega-3 fats. So a lot of researchers in Italy and Spain have actually looked at omega-3 fats and find that they're ketogenic and they're muscle sparing. So if you exercise, when you take omega-3s, you actually spare muscle and burn more fat. We know they're good for the brain and cell membranes and all that. So those are, there's a million supplements we could talk about, but those are two that even if you're thinking of doing the low carb thing, I would recommend getting on ASAP because they're tons of benefits.
Love those, and love all these cool things that we don't typically hear that you've rolled out today. They've been amazing, and I want to throw a kind of a curveball question at you now. Ready?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is going to you personally. We're not talking ketosis now. We're talking about the one thing you do every day that you feel makes the biggest difference in your life.
Yeah, you're gonna love this one. All right. It sounds totally weird, but I tape my mouth shut before I go to bed. And
what?
I know. Yeah. Okay. So if you're new to this, you're going to think, what on earth are you talking about? So there's this disorder that's so pervasive in our society, especially amongst women, is mouth breathing. And when you're mouth breathing while you're sleeping, what you're doing is you're actually basically clogging your airway. So you're creating this hypoxic oxygen deficiency state that really interrupts your sleep. So no kidding, since I learned this from a sleep disorder specialist dentist that I've had on my podcast, Mark Brahan, a great guy. You should check him out, JJ. It's changed my life dramatically. I've meditated, I've done exercise, I've gone on retreats, do yoga, weightlifting, blah, blah, blah. Done a lot of things. This, to me, is the one thing that has dramatically changed my productivity, focus, mental clarity, and deep sleep. It's amazing. So every night when I go to bed and wake up, I can remember my dreams, like verbatim, write them down, and I went for years with I think I dreamt, but I don't really know what it was. But the dreams and the state of deep sleep that you get from mouth taping is unreal. So
this is the craziest thing. I've never heard this before, ever. What do you like? What kind of tape do you use?
You go to Walgreens, literally, it costs $2.99. That's what's cool about this. You don't need any crazy expensive device. You just get this 3M micropore tape. People can just type in on YouTube. I show them exactly what to do. And you just tape your lips horizontally. So it's good to get your spouse involved too. And believe me, if your spouse snores, this is a great way to help them to stop snoring as well. But you'll wake up. The first night is a little rough, like you're laying there sleeping, you feel kind of claustrophobic, and you're like, I don't know if I can do it. So you take the tape off. But after 2 or 3 nights, you'll start to get comfortable with the idea of just having your mouth totally closed. You're going to retrain your nasal passages and learn how to breathe through your nose, which is what we should be doing. And the body fat, the muscle retention, the ability to spike growth hormone. All the benefits that we get from sleep are just enhanced when we're breathing through our nose.
Wow. All right. Well, you win the prize of the most creative answer to that question. Because all the other ones, I'm like, yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that. I was like, all right, never heard that. Now, you put out so much information, such a short amount of time. And the big thing, and again, I said this in the middle, is don't worry, we've got stuff for you. So, you have an amazing book, which I mentioned in the intro, but I also know that you have a cool thing for all of my listeners, a cool gift for all of my listeners. So tell a little bit about your recipe book that you've got for everybody.
Yeah, really good question. Thanks for that, JJ. So, again, this whole ketogenic thing, it's been a lot of self-experimentation and interviewing experts. So I have, a recipe book and a lot of video series and things like that people can check out, highintensityhealth.com. So if you want to learn a little bit more, not just from myself, but other experts, and my wife's really into fitness and stuff. So we just break it down very simply for people, no nonsense. Here's what you do. Here's how you can eat. Here's how you can make nut butters right at your home and start to really incorporate this low carb, high fat lifestyle. You can just go on to highintensityhealth.com and there's a little button right there. People just opt in and get that free series. All
right, cool. So appreciate that. And again, High Intensity Health, great resource. You're amazing, like the perfect person to interview on this topic. So I so appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining me. Yes. Now, after the break, I'm going to be answering listeners' questions. So stay with me.
If you want to lose weight even faster, here's the 2-word secret: extra fiber. JJ Virgin's extra fiber fights hunger. It's detoxifying, and it's the secret to a healthy gut. JJ's extra fiber is grain-free, paleo-safe, and doesn't contain any harmful irritants or allergenic proteins, so you can happily and more safely move towards your weight loss goals. Visit jjvirgin.com/products to give your body the well-rounded consumption of fiber it needs to help balance blood sugar, support healthy digestion, and stay fuller longer. Visit jjvirgin.com/products and get your fiber.
Welcome back. Now, this is the time where I answer a listener's question, and I surf our Facebook official page. You can go to Facebook and go to JJ Virgin Official, and that's where I pull my questions from. So if you've got a question for me, go over there, jump on, and jump onto my Facebook Lives, too. I do them a couple times a week. And you can always throw the questions out there, too. This is one that I get a lot. It goes perfectly with today's topic as well. Comes from Susan in Sugar Land, Texas. Love that area. It's where Dr. Peter Osborne and Dr. Shell Lally are. You're in a great place, Susan. And she says, JJ, how do I know how many carbs I should eat? And again, I get this question all the time. I actually designed the Sugar Impact Diet to help you go through your own personal discovery process so you could figure out exactly that. Now, when you heard Mike talk today, he said, hey, veggies don't count in here. When he was talking about going low carb, he goes, I don't mean broccoli and, kale and those types of things. And so it's really important to learn which vegetables are the non-starchy vegetables that you really, I'd love to see you eating 10 servings of those a day. The other things are where you want to really learn what impact these carbohydrates have. Are they low, medium, or high sugar impact? A lot of that has to do with the fiber in them and how processed they are. And that's where you want to taper down. If you go from a high sugar impact, lots of carb diet to low overnight, you're going to crash. So I take people through a tapering process, and then they transition where they move from being a sugar burner to a fat burner. So they have great, stable, steady blood sugar, lower insulin so they can burn off stored belly fat for fuel. And then you go back and you test so you can really find what's your ideal level. Where should you be? Because again, there's different therapeutic uses for a ketogenic diet. And then there's certain, places like adrenal exhaustion where it's not so great. And I find for most of the people I work with that a lower carb diet with a lot of good non-starchy vegetables is where they feel the best. And so that's what this program takes you through so you can figure it out for yourself because everybody is different. All right. Again, if you'd like to submit a question, head on over to my Facebook page at JJ Virgin Official. Now, I'm going to start a new portion of the show, the gratitude portion of the show. And this is where I have a request from you in order to pull this one off. What I need is for you to, what I'm asking for, what I would so appreciate, what I really want is for you to pop on over to iTunes. And I've had a lot of great star ratings over there, but what I really would love are some reviews And I've got a couple of reviews over there, but I really want to feature a review every week. So I want to feature you and shout out your name. So you can pop on over there and leave a review. I would hugely appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for joining me. I just encourage you to listen to these shows and then do something with them, because knowledge is only powerful when you put it into action. And my kind of rule of thumb with this is if something you heard today inspired you and also kind of scared you a little bit, that probably means it's the thing that you should go after. All right. This is JJ Virgin. Until next time, reminding you to show up, step up. You are stronger than you think.